Commissioner Ritchie has spoken, and I need to get moving. Are you ready? Oh, do I have to do this, right? Do I have to touch this? We all good?
Nope, you don't have to touch it.
Did they do it? Yeah. There you go, good. They should. Good.
Recording in progress.
You all set? Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Chief Taylor, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs
Loud
up.
and clear.
Thank you. All right, welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It is March 23rd, 2022. It's Wednesday. It's the City Council, City of Providence Charter Review Commission. We're going to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Chairman Johnny Diossi,
Present.
Vice Chairman Oscar Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Carmen Castillo is absent. Commissioner Brian Principe,
Present.
Commissioner Nina Pande,
Present.
Commissioner Mackie McClurdy is absent. Commissioner Tiana Ochoa is absent. Commissioner Robert Rishi,
Here.
Commissioner Dr. Wayne Montague.
Present.
We have 6 present and 4 absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Clerk, anything? You all set? Okay, thank you all. Let the record reflect that we have Deputy Majority Leader Mary Kay Harris present. We also have my former, Majority Leader Chief Taylor present, and we also have our Deputy Solicitor Ken Chiaverini present. We also have Councilman LaFortune present. I think that's all the council members. We also have former Council President Peter Mancini, one of my many council presidents I had over the decades. Welcome, thank you for being here. Yes, I did. So let's begin, I guess, begin the beginning. We have item number 1, which is Article 11, called the Board of Commissions, right? Section 1102, Board of Licenses. And who do we have for that item?
We have Stephanie Lopes, the license administrator. We also have Dylan Conley, who's the Esquire Chairman, Commissioner Peter Mancini, and, oh, I'm sorry. Charles
Mr.
Newton is the
Newton?
Vice Chairman. Yes.
Do you all want to come to the table, or are you guys fine? Okay. Are you folks going to present?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't you state your name for the record, your position, and then you can tell us what you're presenting. Madam Clerk, are they being picked up by the hour right now?
Yes.
Okay, so you're live on YouPage, whatever they call it today. That's all you.
YouTube.
My name is Stephanie Lopes. I'm the license administrator for the Board of Licenses.
Dylan Conley, Chairman of the Board of Licenses.
Welcome, Mr. Chairman, Madam Lopes. So, and you know the section we're talking about, so do you have any conversation or ideas or changes, or et cetera?
We do. We have a few recommendations for revision. The first being under Section A.
This would be section 1102 entitled Board of Licenses,
Correct.
subsection A. Commissioners, I believe you should have copies in your hand. So let me do this for the record, if I could. How many page document did they submit? 3 pages or 2?
2.
2 pages?
Yes.
Could we identify, now this should be exhibit what now at this time?
That will be
Exhibit, bear with me 1 second.
10.
So could we identify this 2-page document submitted by Board of Licenses as exhibit 10? For record, do I have that motion?
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, second by Commissioner Montague. Discussion? All in favor? Not sufficient for the record, you have the mic.
So the later part of that section currently states right now that no member of the board shall continue without reappointment. Our revision for that was to give a 30-day grace period beyond the expiration of that term. That was because a few years ago, there was an instance when there was a change in the administration as well as the council, and we needed 2 members to be sworn in. There was a lag in, like I said, the scheduling, so the board had to go, I believe, for about 2 or 3 weeks without quorum and was unable to vote on any matters.
Can I just ask questions when I read this, if I'm reading it correctly? That this just basically extends it for another 30 days. So what happens is after the 31st day, then that position would be considered declared open, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, is that right? Okay. because I think that was a bone of contention with the commissioner's position where he seems to be serving in perpetuity because they believe you don't have to ever reappoint the commissioner ever again. That's been an issue. So I just want to make sure that we don't get caught up in that cycle. Not that we don't think you all do a good job, but I always believe it's very important that special council members, that they get to meet every term, who's ever gonna, have their voices be heard and voted on for members who, members are gonna serve in these boards and commissions, because the last, they say almost, almost 10 years now, the commissioner right now has never gone before the council again for reappointment. So as I'm concerned, I disagree with the legal interpretation. I've used it as advice, not law, in which he has never been held accountable by the council or the public on his reappointment or his position. So that's always been a concern. But Commissioner Richard,
Mr. Chairman, so I understand this. I totally agree with this, so that you don't lose a quarrel. Let's say a term expires January 1st, 2022. The position is vacant, then we're just allowing a 30-day extension so that the mayor can go through the process in that 30 days.
Correct.
I don't know if that is clear.
right,
The position should be, maybe the language could be changed by the city solicitor's office. The position is declared, that the vacancy occurred. However, that there's a holdover of 30 days.
right.
And then the process can go on so that, wait another 30 days because someone interprets it that way and then get the same vote.
Right, because there's also an issue when come January 1st or so, in the first council meeting, a couple of things happen, right? There's a new elected president, a president pro tem, all the leadership, and then appointment of committee members. And most new committee members don't know what's going on. They're just trying to get things reconnoitered. And then the mayor's have on that January 1st actually appoint all or submit all their appointments to the council on who they're supposed to go to in these positions. So you're creating a
And maybe we should make this not
Like
a
a
provision just for the board of licenses, somewhere else in the charter.
like a universal.
Right, because you're gonna have the same problem on other boards and commissions, and sometimes if you have a 5-member board, 2 or 3 members, well, at least 2, I don't know about 3, if that instance occurs, could be off.
So we can do what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So we do is instead of picking and choosing, we can just simply cross out those areas and do a universal section in the charter, so with the voting on.
Right.
Like I mentioned earlier, the last chart, remember that?
That's right.
Right? I'm sorry, Commissioner. And I think,
Council President, so yes, and exactly what you just suggested, but I'm also gonna ask, Ms. Wilkes, the reason was because if there was a lapse of time, right, is 30 days, and this is a question, I'm gonna put my school board hat on, is 30 days enough? Or should it be 30 days with a review for another 30 days? Because I know that during some of those transitions, could it be 30 days up to 3 times for a full 90 days or something like that? Or is that too much? I don't know, because I know
I go as far
without
as,
having a full quorum, it's hard to get this
I
stuff.
think I understand your point, but I'm going to the pragmatic approach. I think if you don't put a box in it,
Mhm.
things won't, it doesn't force. And putting a time period like this, let's make it, let's say it's 45 days,
Mhm.
and making a true hard date, it forces, when there's political paralysis, it forces a movement.
A movement.
And what happens is like,
Understood.
they can't get it done, but guess what, you're stuck with something and they're done. But at least it forces that out, because what'll happen is, it's a political paralysis. As far as the council is concerned, the commission's position is supposed to should be reappointed, submitted, but because of the political paralysis, they don't. You know what I mean?
Understood.
And there's no one to talk to the charter to get someone to enforce that charter provision.
So,
And you-
No, correct, I agree. You give them more time, they're gonna take time to be like when you have an exam in high school coming up, you wait for the night before. And so if you move the night, the exam up a month, you're still gonna wait for the night before. So, at some point, they gotta do this. We give them a little breathing room for change administration and,
And that's
other
what,
issues that could
Right.
be going on, and not necessarily good, a transition period. But 30 days should be enough, but now you're giving them 3 years plus 30 days to serve.
right. And that's I agree, because you kind of really need to force a hard stop. This is me. I know Commissioner
I just
Montague.
want to add that, it should be universal, and I think 30 days is enough. Like you said, give them more, or be a year,
It will be,
or 2 years,
exactly.
so I agree with you.
So I'd ask the city solicitor. I think in order, and I think the commission's onto something. Creating a universal clause that would probably just plug it there, and then it can address all these types of appointments and positions throughout the charter. Solicitor, are you there? Did we lose you?
Yeah,
Okay, and could you then look to that, and then we can just, so this way, I'll give you an example, there's a definitive conversation, I'm using the commissioners because that's a bone of contention. There's a definitive conversation now with the Commissioner of Public Safety. That person can only stay there another 30 days or the position's vacant, done. You know, they have to reappoint, they have to submit. And why I'm saying I think it's important because this. The whole purpose of is that you're trying to avoid you're trying to maintain a democratic republic here. When you allow the executive branch and any form of government to come too, their powers are too wide and deep, you can never get that accountability you need. Now, somebody says, oh, the mayor should have, no, but it just creates the balance. That's why
I was, excuse me,
Christian,
I wasn't talking about department heads, I'm talking about boards and commissions.
No, no,
We
no.
already talked about 403B and then we can revisit that.
No, but I meant Commissioner Perry's position is one.
I know what you mean.
That
That's
is-
a department head and these are boards and commissions.
I'm
and
talking
that's-
about-
No,
I'm
Commissioner
talking
Perry
about
is
boards and
appointed by,
commissions.
submission by the mayor and appointed by
I
the
know,
council.
I understand. But my proposal was for boards and commissions.
Mine was still.
Now,
As well as mine.
Yes.
we'll get to, we already talked about 403B, is it, about the department heads, I think, but when we go to later in April, we could talk about it again. And this, when we take a
Okay.
vote,
But this is about boards and commissions.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm not gonna-
because that was a reappointment issue, well, this could be a reappointment, but this is about boards and commissions.
All right, it's fair enough. Here. Mr. Pittsburgh?
So, Council President, this might be the time, the 5 members on the Board of Licenses, they're all appointed by the mayor, right? So,
Well, they're appointed by the mayor and then approved by the council.
I mean, every Board and Commission member across the city is approved by the council, right? But what we have is no council appointees in the Board of Licenses, which, I feel that.
Can you expand the board of licenses?
Maybe, I'm not even calling for expanding it, although, maybe that's an option. But so is an option of council appointees on a 5-member board. The council has appointments on a lot of other boards, and I venture to say should have appointments on every board. I'm not saying a majority, and I'm not advocating for an expansion of the board per se, but it might be worthwhile for the council to have at least an appointment on the board of licenses.
Commissioner Richard?
Other than maybe the board of contract and supply, are there councilmatic positions?
Retirement board,
Uh-huh.
board of investment commissioners,
Planning commission.
planning commission,
City
retirement board.
plan, right, I should
There's a
know
few.
that, I was the council appointee.
Yeah, you would have done that.
PRA, right? Partnership development.
Yeah,
Do we run into a separation of powers issue?
well, I know, he's just mentioned
With
it's already on the
state,
other board.
with the state
I don't know, good question.
legislature and the executive, it's,
You see, this is a separation of powers issue. This is just exactly it. I don't know. So.
I raised that, that's on my.
Yeah, no, it is.
I
It's a
don't
great
disagree
question.
with your idea at all, but I don't know if you run into a separation of powers.
Good question.
We have it on some boards, and this is a very important, impactful board for our neighborhoods. We know that.
No, I would ask if the solicitor could indulge us, and I'm not gonna spot right now, but Commissioner Ritchie brought up a separation of powers question, which would be interesting. If there's any prohibition in any form or fashion, but also I'd like to know, way back when in the history of the city, the record reflect that Councilman Gunkoff was present. Weren't the licenses issued by the city council or the city council to begin with way back when? And then in 1980, the council kind of gave up this authority. My impression is the council was the one that you actually issued licenses way back.
well, that would make sense with Home Rule Charter being enacted 1980. That sounds consistent. with what your recollection is.
Yeah, So. I know, so it's just
Some
something to think
cities and
about.
towns, the town councils and city councils are the board of elections.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, if I remember correctly, the city council used to be the zoning board, all those kinds of things at one time.
Right.
I'm not saying
They
this is.
still are somewhere, so
Yeah, they are.
maybe I guess they don't have a separation of powers issue because this has come up since 1980
Exactly.
in state law.
Councilman Guncott, I think he has his hand on. Councilman, do you have a question?
Hi, Chairman. I've just been listening to this conversation, and I think it's very fascinating. If the law does allow, I do think that there could be an opportunity to also look at the planning department. So there are 7 members that are appointed specifically by the mayor. And if we wanted to balance the planning department, it might be interesting to actually have some council appointees on that as well. So it's more reflective of what neighborhoods would like to see in terms of planning and development. The same could also potentially apply to the school board if it is an appointed school board, just so that there's more of a balance in terms of council appointees as well as mayoral appointees. But again, I think the law would have to ultimately decide whether or not that's actually feasible.
Councilman LaFortune, do you have your hand up for a moment?
I do. So, I definitely agree with Councilman Gonzalez in terms of like the balance, but I think we also need to be careful because there are, council people on boards, and there seems to be sometimes some conflicts when trying to schedule meetings. And I think having representation from the communities make the most sense. In terms of the school board, as a parent, and what I've been hearing from a lot of families in Providence Public Schools is that they want to move away from a fully appointed school board. And again, I agree that those are things where the policies would have to change, but they would like to see a school board where people can, be elected by the public, or maybe have a hybrid type model of a school board. But I think what people want to see a little bit more on some of these committees outside of the council committees is that to have more people who are ingrained in the communities that they're living in, to have a more balance and have more diverse voices, not just in terms of diverse voices, in terms of like leadership and people who are, known in the community, but having people who are doing the everyday work and that, we don't always hear about.
So Councilman, could I ask you, I know we're gonna be taking up the school department in the future. If you have like an idea or proposal, like what you're thinking about, could you submit it to the clerk's office and we could actually talk about it at that next thing? So I mean, I think everybody's willing to listen to different ideas. So could I prevail upon you to maybe kind of flesh that out a little bit and be willing to come back and maybe talk about what you're thinking about, and then the commission can weigh in on it?
Absolutely. I'm
Right.
happy to do that, and could also look at what other, places have done and maybe see if we could have some data to back it up. But I do think that, having a school board that's fully appointed by the mayor, there's certainly an imbalance, and there's a lot of voices that are not all representative. Also, not all the school board members are parents, of Providence Public Schools. So it's hard when you have a school board where people are making decisions, but are not necessarily part of the school district. So there needs to be a bit more balance. And we do have some amazing members, and recently we appointed some young people who graduated from Providence Public Schools, but I think there are definitely opportunities for us to see some improvements around there.
Thank you. And then when we do, we'll look forward to that further conversation. I appreciate the input, both you and Councilman Guncott. But I'm going to go back, of course, to the license. And I know you should have some additional proposed changes too. So I think we got a little rousing discussion on subsection A, which, by the way.
Well, just to reiterate the point, I am referring to council appointees to these boards, not necessarily members of the council sitting on the boards and commissions. Just to make sure we're clear on that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sorry.
Madam?
So subsection B, number 3, right now it states that no license shall be suspended or revoked for more than 72 hours Our revision was just to 48 hours. That allows us to be in compliance with our open meetings notice requirements.
And so can you tell me, no lesson shall be suspended for more than 48 hours?
That would be correct, that,
So did you guys want to limit your authority? Is it?
No.
Because don't you want to have that you could actually do more than 72, or you're not allowed to, is that what's happening?
Strictly on an emergency basis for the notice provision, so they get a fully noticed 2-day, so that they can prepare a defense. So it's that, we will give them 48 hours of notice that their license may be suspended or revoked.
Oh, so before you have to give them 72 hours?
Yes,
Oh,
so there's a gap between
Thank
the
you.
charter and the OMA.
okay. Can you make it even shorter than that? Would you want, can you make it 24 hours notice? Yeah. Well, what happens if it's an emergency? That's the emergency for
The
you?
emergency provision is what I hope to talk about next.
Okay, okay, then I'll wait. Can you tell me what I'm sorry.
No.
Can you just tell me what the 2 and 3 days is, so I understand that?
yes, oh, sorry. The 2 days was just the 48, is the 48 hours and the 72 is the 3 days.
Okay,
So
thank you. Commissioner Ritchie?
Can we play this out so I can understand it, maybe we're not sure. So there's an issue, serious issue, that the police want, come forward, law department comes forward, whoever comes forward. Right now, you have to have a hearing within 72 hours. And you're saying because of the open meeting, you have to have a hearing within 48?
So, right now, if we suspend a license on an emergency basis, we have to have a hearing within 72 hours.
Post suspension of the license.
Yeah, so we have the emergency suspension, and the most we can do is for 72 hours. We've been given advice from the Attorney General's office and the Department of Business Regulations that they prefer we keep it as short as humanly possible whenever our next meeting is. We notice our meetings under the Open Meetings Act every 48 hours. So we know that we can provide a meeting that's duly noticed in a 48-hour window. So to try to comply with the Attorney General's office underneath the Open Meetings Act and the Department of Business Regulations in terms of defending businesses' right to their ability to perform. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to meet them where they're at.
Yeah, so they're concerned about the long period of time before there's a hearing on the suspension. Full blown. Okay, I understand.
Did City Solicitor Shepherd, did you want something? Did you raise your hand? Did you have something you want to weigh on this issue or something?
No, the prior issue, I just want to, just for the record, note that under section 1202B, I'll read it. No member of a board, authority, or commission shall continue in office after his or her term expires without being reappointed by the appointing authority. So I just want to point out if you want to make a change across the board, that would be where the section that we would make it. So it would apply even-handedly to everyone.
Thank you, Solicitor. Well, and he was going back to the same. Commissioner Pandy, I think you said.
Thank
you had
you,
your hand up?
yes, Council
Yes.
President, and perhaps this is what Commissioner Ritchie was trying to get at. And it goes back to what we were saying about some of these universally applied language. Am I understanding that the AG's office in DVR has guidance or language around 48 hours or 72 hours, or is that just a recommendation and not firm?
I would say it's a recommendation. We're certainly not in violation by doing it in 72 hours. So the Attorney General's office, the standard is 48 hours, not including weekends and holidays. That's just for the open meetings notice provision. So if you can hold a non-emergency meeting, they have a strong preference for you to hold a non-emergency meeting, which is the full 48 hours notice. What DVR's opinion is let's say we suspend someone on a Sunday and we have a meeting on Monday. Why can't we have the hearing for them on Monday? Why do we keep them closed automatically until Wednesday? They think that's sort of an injustice, it's failure to process. So we're trying to take our 72-hour standard in the charter and shrink it such that it reflects DVR's concerns regarding the failure of due process in this suspension of license.
So it's not a compliance matter per se.
Correct.
Any other questions? I just, I have it. I got it in
No,
a total. It's a long weekend, it's holiday weekend. Friday night, let's make it 11 o'clock Friday night. I don't want it 1 o'clock, because that's Saturday morning. Boom, just come in, shut the place down. How does that function now with the whole open meeting laws 48 hours? Because they say you can't include weekends or holidays. So now I'm still stuck at, so now I got that 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
Then I can't count them at all. And then your first notice is gonna be probably that potentially Tuesday morning, whatever, and then you're not gonna be hearing until like Thursday. So I'm trying to understand, like, I mean, I gather all that does is say that you don't have to wait 72 hours from Tuesday now, so you can do 48 hours. But basically, because in open meeting laws, you can't include weekends or holidays anyway. So you're kind of, the whole notice thing is all, correct me if I'm wrong, is a totally different, it's a lot of whack. Like we have blocks of time that have been taken out of the week. You can't do, notice don't count. Like you can notice on Friday, but the whole weekend means nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, so,
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to stand at the end. I understand what they're saying, but there's some bad actors out there that get licenses, right? And there's some really bad actors out there. And I get concerned that is the 72 hours also becomes, I understand what they're saying, but the 72 hours, they go, listen, you're a bad actor. It's like, well, we'll see you next Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're well within the law. Because these bad actors, they come back. I mean, you guys see more than I do. They come back and come back. And I'm not saying, but the point is that there's this thing where, especially the bad actors, they play the system to their advantage. And I don't know, like, if that's just an advisory opinion, I'm just wondering, it's 72 hours, has it worked? What's been the biggest, was it the AG, the present AG who came up with this concern?
It's my
You know what I'm saying?
understanding.
What horse did he decide to ride on that this is the important thing that he said? I need to call the board of places downtown and get this. I'm just, looking at advice. I'm just trying to say, like, what's driving that conversation?
It's my understanding that it's conversations with the hearing officer at DBR, but I haven't personally been directly contacted on it. So I don't want to step on anyone's toes and misreport, but it's my understanding that that's where it comes from.
Is the concern, Mr. Chairman, that, that there's a property right in the license that we're going too long,
Exactly.
denying them, the right? That's what it is. And when will the clock start ticking? After the license is suspended or when the police shut them down?
So
Because they're kind of on notice when the police shut them down, and the next morning you have the meeting.
the clock starts when we vote at the meeting the next
Right.
morning.
See, and now, I appreciate your statement there, but now I'm gonna go with the opposite in my mind. I'll tell you what, I don't believe a license or permit is a property right. I think it's a permission slip. And it's the city of Providence giving you permission to be a good neighbor, a good business person. And when you don't, I don't believe it rises to a property.
So
right.
you say it's a privilege,
It's a privilege, not a property
but to
right.
take that privilege away, it should be the due process, and I think.
I know, it's right, but it's still a privilege, not a right, and it's a privilege, not a property right. It used to be a property right way back when, as you know, when they had limited number of licenses they
Yes.
could issue.
Yes.
And then we got, like, whenever someone went to open a restaurant or bar, they had to contact someone in Florida who actually had the license and pay them $40,000 for a city of Providence restaurant license to open up a product. It was like insane. And then finally they woke up that should no longer exist.
So you can't sell a license no more?
No, if you remember those times, they meant a limited number of licenses.
Right, but if I have,
And
if
they-
I have a
no,
property,
they can't.
so then isn't there a property right, we're getting way off.
Yeah, I get it. No, but back then it was.
If I
limited
can
number.
sell that license when I sell that license, it's a problem.
No, I'll put it this way.
But we're getting way.
We're getting way off.
We'll go get a drink and talk about it.
We're playing lawyers. I'm gonna go on and think to get a property right, because I don't want them to have a claim they have a property right, so I'm not, but, I like to have a better understanding, if the city solicitor can review that, give some guidance, I mean, I don't want to inhibit the city in any form or fashion, the board of license, to be able to do everything they can to deal with bad actors, bottom line in my mind, and I hate to do anything that does that, I don't know if this helps you, hurts you, or basic does nothing. And I just want to make sure, if it does nothing, I'm cool, but I don't want to ever put you folks at a disadvantage when those bad actors show up. That's all I care about. Commissioner Panday?
So, Council President, first of all, thank you for that conversation, because I was trying to understand if it's not a compliance issue. Is it an internal practice that the board just adopts, right? But then, do we want to allow, I don't want to say that flexibility, but do we want to create guardrail to allow for any of those other potential eventualities, right? A long weekend, something can't happen, a quorum can't come together. But your practice of the board could be, you know, if these are your guardrails, your practice could be the 48 hours, if that makes sense. I don't know if they have to be synonymous, if that.
Well, they also could do this, and the solicitor can help me, is that the city charter is our constitution, it says 72 hours. But if they're looking to go, sounds like more restrictive, to go to 48 hours, wouldn't the Board of Commissioners be able to actually promulgate a rule or regulation to make it 48 hours to see how it works?
That's what I'm wondering.
Is that what you're saying?
That's what
You know,
I'm
like,
asking.
you keep it 72, right, because that's the city, it's the city, that's the charter, you know, the constitution, but they're making it more, if they were trying to make it 100 days, now they got a problem, they need a charter change. But they're looking to make it more restrictive. Could they just simply promulgate a rule tomorrow in which the board of license can make it 48 hours? Solicitor?
I'm not sure. I would like to speak to our attorney who's assigned to the Board of Licenses to get his take on it. He deals with these type of matters, especially DBR. So that would be my inclination before even opining.
Because this is more restriction on the board. And as you just mentioned, in theory, create a due process for the license holder. So and it benefits them, right?
What I'm
So,
trying to get behind the part of the
Right.
Attorney General DPR.
so
In that vein, I have one quick question. In practice, there's an incident, it's closed, the next day, next morning, there's a vote of the board, and the license is suspended, and then there's a hearing within 72 hours. How many of those are resolved at that first hearing, and how many?
The only time they're resolved at the first hearing is when we have basically video evidence that the incident was in no way related to the bar. I can think of one example in which there was a shooting in the proximity of a bar. The police watched the video footage. No persons involved with the shooting were at the bar at any given point in time. It just was a matter of like people walking down the street. So they can be reopened in that time period, but we never impose penalties in that time period. It takes a while to do sort of the testimony and research.
So then, Mr. Chairman, the 48 hours would be beneficial to the innocent licensee if that hit. So that's getting at what the pushback is to the 48 from the 72.
But
They're
then
saying
they-
in practice, they have instances where they do reopen them at that first hearing.
and then they potentially, if they're allowed to promulgate a rule and regulation, they could possibly do that now.
Yeah.
And then, because even if we adopt this won't take effect until next year anyway. Commissioner Montague, apologies.
Just, I'm sending the guidance from the city solicitor's office.
See, so can you check that out? Because if they're able to, they could probably try to, pilot test this thing and see if it works now. And by the way, you may come back and say, this is not gonna work, but it does work. I don't know. You may say 24 hours. I don't know.
That's exactly.
And by the way, so I think, I think I can say on behalf of this commission, we're looking to make things better, not make it worse. So I'll tell you that. So I'm willing to flesh that out. Solicitor, can you look that into it?
I will work with the attorney as well as the chairman and Stephanie and get back to this committee.
And let us know if they can promulgate a rule on this particular one. Next time, I think item number 5, is it?
That's correct. I'm gonna take this over to the chairman.
Okay,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
President, this is my drafting, in this exact same situation where there is an emergency and the police department deemed that continued operation of the license is a threat to public safety. In order for us to close them, we have to convene a meeting. I think there's sort of a strange reality there when we convene the meeting. We have very limited information about what the incident was. The licensee themselves is, I don't think in my tenure they've ever been present once, maybe once. And we close them for 72 hours based on the advice of the police department. So we create a public meeting where in theory something could go wrong. We create the amount of work involved with collecting the Board of License members. We set the 72-hour clock and all those sorts of things. And yet all we really have is the expertise of the police department that there's a threat to public safety. I can guarantee you that the board never underneath my tenure, and I don't think underneath anyone else's, would be so bold as to say to the police department, we disagree with you. We don't think it's a threat to public safety. We don't really have the expertise or the information in that time period to deny them. So instead of creating the additional work and instead of creating a procedure where potentially something could go wrong, I thought it made more sense that upon the recommendation from the police department that there is a threat to public safety, the chairperson could order them closed for that emergency time period instead of having to convene an entire meeting.
Commissioner Ritchie?
I see the point, if we tied it to the 48 hours.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was gonna be longer, then maybe the licensee does deserve more of a hearing before more than one person on the board. But if you could do it quickly within that 48 hours, notwithstanding a holiday or a circumstance like that, that may happen.
Well, I still want to go back to the idea of this whole open meeting law problem, because like it happens Friday night. Like, okay, and the guy was, how do you can't count now Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And I'm just gonna, so like, is there any guidance from, I presume it's not, I don't know, I shouldn't say that. From the fact that, what do you do with that? Because now, if everything's gonna happens Friday, Saturday. So my point is that I'm just talking about the open meeting laws,
Well,
where we can't include weekends and.
Why do we stick it to this open meetings law when we have a very small universe of who we have to notice? This isn't,
Well, that's.
and they're already
that's
kind of
what I was-
on notice
that's
because
what I-
the cops
that's what I was
showed up
gonna
and
go.
closed the place. Yeah, okay.
I want to know whether or not, do they have to go through that open meeting notice thing?
Currently
That's the question.
we do. We can do it in less than 48 hours because it's an emergency. There are narrow exemptions that meetings with less than a 48-hour notice.
So you can ignore weekends and holidays?
Yes,
Oh, wow.
I-
but only
that
for
one.
the emergency.
So Friday night, Monday morning,
I
Monday,
posted
whenever you have a
Monday.
hearing on a Monday, you could have
You
it on
could
the Monday.
post it Friday night.
I could, yes,
You could, like, it happens Friday night, they call in, you could post it Friday night, and then you could have it potentially Sunday night. I'm just, I mean, if it was a serious, I'm just on it, right, yeah.
we could do it Saturday morning. I could post Saturday morning and have it Saturday morning as an emergency.
Oh, you
meeting.
can, really?
Yes.
And you don't have to follow the 48-hour rule, and the weekends and holidays.
Correct.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Can the council have that authority? I know.
We don't want that.
I'm ju- I'm
You can, Council
just
President.
joking.
We don't, the council.
It's me, you're right. Former council president, so yeah, let's go.
Emergency if you're gonna. do
But that's what
it.
it is. I didn't know that's, you guys have that,
That sounds.
that sounds, I didn't know that.
So, Mr. President, one of the key examples for me, and quite frankly, was very thankful to the licensee, even though there was a shooting at their establishment, we were unable to garner a quorum the following morning. So we actually didn't have the legal authority to close them because we could not get a quorum. I believe there was basically an illness, and then one or two commissioners were out of town, and it was unexpected. Unexpected that they were out of town, not unexpected that necessarily an incident had occurred. And the licensee basically had to voluntarily agree to be closed because we were unable to take an action to close them. Adding this provision avoids that problem.
Commissioners, any comments, questions? Then I would just ask the citizens, the only thing I'm concerned about is, I think it's an admirable effort what you wrote. My concern is, my concern is ambiguity. Because what happens is, when the police department determines this reasonably operation is a threat to public safety, what happens, I don't know where public safety is defined, like, Sergeant McCluskey says, is that public safety? You know what I mean? I don't know, I guess my own question, I think you kind of need to figure out how to fill that in a little bit better. So city solicitors, so no one can claim it was an arbitrary and capricious closing by the police department to get you or your future chairperson to say, do this, and then all of a sudden we get it, I think it's a good idea. I just think there needs to be a little more fill in the blanks this way. There's a little more checks and balances, so no one can say it was done in an arbitrary capricious manner. The police departments hate Johnny Gliozzi's restaurant, and they just, by the way, and guess what? That will happen,
Yes.
okay? And so people say it's too, so I would just ask that, you mentioned about due process earlier, Commissioner, that
Exactly.
you just kind of fill in that a little bit deeper, and which, by the way, and I think there's some merit to it. And I think you also need to do is figure out, do you post it? What do you do with it at the end of that? And then, what if the chairperson is not available? Can the vice chair? And that's the other question, is, and it was like, the chair, let's say you're on vacation, I don't know, they can't get hold of that, something, or you're, does now what happens? Can the vice chair, so that should be something you should think about. I'm just,
Mhm.
what I do to ask you, to talk to city solicitor, fill in the blanks and maybe kind of rework it. I don't, Commissioner Fandon?
Yes, Council President, in that same spirit of your thinking, does the 72 hours then seem excessive as well? Because if there's a target, should that be reduced to 24 hours and there's a good faith attempt to convene a quorum of the board?
Yeah, should he give, because this is almost a decision, 72 hours, and so they could actually drag it out. There's pros and cons, I know.
That's what I.
Do you mean in the middle, make it 48? I don't
It's
know.
making me think, right, the, not only the legality of this, but then if it is, what is that tight window?
Because that is a lot of power to do. There's nothing
That is a
wrong,
lot
say,
of
okay,
power.
boom, and they're closed.
And that's assuming that the chair, like, it's making a lot of assumptions that could change with change in leadership, both from a public safety perspective as well as the Board of Licensing perspective. And so if there is a provision, and I'm not opposed to this type of a provision, but if we need to put tighter parameters on it, including 24 hour versus 72 hours to force the conversation.
I think from a practical standpoint, the next business day functions very well. So Friday ends up being, if it's a Saturday morning closure and there's a Monday holiday, that's your worst case scenario. That brings you all the way out to the Tuesday. But if it's a Sunday morning closure, we can have the full hearing on Monday. Tracking people down on Sundays it's difficult.
Not only that, the licensee would need to quiet counsel, go over it, and you have to give them, reasonable amount of time to prepare it.
Probably at least 48, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, if the next business day makes sense, right? And so this way, at least it's in there, but I do think writing 72 hours might sound off alarm bells, right? Because that is.
Because the licensee could waive it and say, I need an extra day or two to allow that, right?
Commonly, they volunteer to be closed.
I would also ask if indulge me, is that, do you guys presently promulgate any rules and regulations?
Yes.
So I would also think that if you end up keeping 72, that you can probably fill in some of the blanks with a promulgation of how this would be laid out and how we fix it, because what happens, it's like anything else, you've got the Constitution, and then
Yes.
it's somewhat general and broad, specifically, so states and cities and towns can you can tailor it, more restrictive, but you can at least make, start addressing things, that's some issues. I just would want to make sure that maybe something that said that there'll be rules and regulations, maybe put rules and regulations we promulgated to further something to address that. So maybe this way causes, the charter causes the incentive to promulgate rules and regulations, and then you do it accordingly based on the general parameters. So I don't know if that helps.
Suggestion.
So I asked the city solicitor, could you work with the chairperson and Ms.
Absolutely.
Phillips on this matter? Are those the other those ones? May I ask a question? I was just wondering, can anybody in city government issue a license? Can any department own the board of license? Is in the board of license, no one can issue a license?
I believe so. I'm not 100% confident just because the sheer number of licenses that the city issues.
I'm talking about the licenses in your realm.
So
Who has the authority to issue those licenses?
It's the board, but we can delegate limited authority. Some are done administratively after an initial review. Nothing's administrative out of the gate. But say a monthly entertainment license, instead of having PPAC come in every single month to explain how their event is going to work, you know how a PPAC event is going to work. So they can
Who can issue that?
It's underneath our authority. It goes on a consent agenda. I believe they all go on a consent agenda, right? But we will only review it the board will only review it individually if there's an objection. And it can be, so everything is processed administratively, but we still vote on a consent agenda.
I mean, process to you, but can, not giving, I'm going to present a real world issue, that just came recently. They were saying that the Commission of Public Safety was allowing entertainment license and issuing them out.
No,
Does the Commission of Public Safety have the authority to issue entertainment license or any type of, these type of licenses, any form or fashion?
no,
Have you delegated to any department or the commission in any form or fashion?
no.
Okay, so then what happens just simply is that is, PPAC wants to do it, they file an application with you, right? Couldn't you reject that application? You say, oh, you know what, this is gonna go to the board, like, or is it just pure discretion? Like, you say, you know what, PPAC's gonna do an event where, I don't know, it's gonna be open 24, I don't know, something, they wanna do a 24/7, boom box festival for 48 hours straight. And my point is like, okay, she gets his entertainment license, you know what I'm talking about? And then,
I do.
and you guys
So-
find out on Monday and the city's up in an uproar.
Our,
Just as an extremism, I guess,
our standard for a consent agenda is that you cannot have an event in a different style than you've ever done before without it actually being vetted by the board and generally by city services as well.
Correct.
City services.
Arts, culture and tourism, there's.
Yeah, but it'd be the administrator who actually issues the license, right? You
For
actually.
PPAC, so if PPAC.
PPAC comes in and says, I'm gonna do this event. They file an application, just help me to the president. They file an application, they'll do an event next weekend. They go to you, right?
Yes.
Then what happens next?
One of the staff will review it, they'll look at the list of entertainments, the dates, obviously make sure there's nothing egregious on there saying that it's till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, anything like that. They take all of that information that's in the application, put it on the docket, which then goes on the consent agenda once we confirm that this is a regular typical PPAC event. Then that docket goes before the board for vote. After they approve it, go
And the
in
event could already happen already by the time it comes to you guys, is that possible? Oh, okay, all right, I'm sorry. So the event still does not happen until the board sees it and says, okay, it's under consent. It was vetted by the administrative process and we have confidence and they did per the parameters and they're good with it. I get, okay, I thought the event happens, then you guys see it post. So you guys.
No
can set-
event legally happens until we vote on it.
Okay, no, that's fair, but I mean, so in theory though, she could put it on the list. And you're the board could say, you know what, we're not gonna approve it, we're gonna say no to this consent one, we heard some thing, it didn't go well the last couple of years, it was and although you did a fine job, we disagree, so the board can do that. I was just wondering that process.
It happens a couple times a quarter.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's happened a few times, but the board will pull things off of the consent and.
I just heard something from my council colleague and I went to Paris. I said, well, you're hearing me ask this question, because they said, all right, let me find out. So I'm gonna take what you told me and tell them, because they were informed that somehow the commissioner had authority to issue these entertainment license, and he was doing it. Now, if that's the case, I just wanna know if it's the case, if it's not the case, then great.
I believe I'm aware of that rumor and understand what their misconception is, but definitively. that is
I would
not
advise
correct.
that if you know the council members who were concerned about, give them a call, let them know.
I would love, give me a call, whoever it is.
No, well, I think you can surmise who it is, because it just happened recently, okay?
Mhm.
My point is that why don't you give them a call, education is always helpful, let them know what your process is. I don't, they'll hear it for like third or fourth hand from me, so try to ask them. And I know I'm sidebarring, but I think it's all part of government, it's all good government.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me, Commissioner, I appreciate that. That's awesome.
That's fine.
So is that all we have at this time?
That is it.
Great.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Solicitor, you know what you need to do, right?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. And Madam Clerk, be keeping a laundry list of all the different things we're looking for, because eventually we're gonna have a corral session, this commission, say, okay, where's the new changes, what's the new stuff, what's the modification, and we're gonna kind of figure out how we're gonna make this all work. Right, so when the commission members aren't keeping track, we're kind of in all of it.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Board of License members.
Mr.
Great to see you all.
Council members, commissioners, thank you all very much.
I know. I used to.
Yes, you speak as well.
I know, I do that, I guess I'm gonna have to do it here. Let's get it started.
Yes.
Before I show.
Thank you.
Thank you
guys, when you take care of it,
So that was So I guess we have Article 2, but is anybody here for Article 2?
Yes, Commissioner Parry.
So there you go, we made some issues.
Commissioner Parry's
Perfect.
present. Colonel Clements will not be attending. Sue Paraquito is not attending, but she said she has no changes. And I did not hear from Clara.
Okay, great, so I guess we have, once again, Article number
No.
11?
No.
City Department. Commissioner, I'm sure you heard the debate and the conversation.
Yes, I have.
That's a good.
No,
that's-
I'm on mute. I have been following, yes.
That's good, that's good. So it looks like, do you have any proposed recommended changes? Did you submit anything or
It's attached.
was it, which one, this one here?
The last page.
Yeah, but this was submitted by
Oh,
the
no,
commissioner.
that's all I received.
Commissioner, did you or your department submit any proposed ideas or changes for your provisions at all?
No, I'm here to represent Pima. They have no recommended changes. The police department, Colonel Clemens does not have any recommended changes to the charter. I represent the fire department and do not have any changes in my office as well. Telecommunications, Sue, also, I think the internal auditor referenced her. So I'm representing her as well, that there are no recommended changes pursuant to your request for feedback from public safety.
So, well, actually, it's actually Article 10 and Article 11, right?
Actually, should be just Article 10.
Oh, okay.
It's Article 10, did you put this in as an exhibit?
Yeah, we'll put that as, so we have an exhibit from, I think, Majority Leader Taylor. It's a one-page exhibit. We make an exhibit 11, identify exhibit 11. Motion
Mr.
by
Chairman, I make a
Commissioner
motion to put it in as exhibit number 11.
Have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Principal, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yes, so we do have this, and we have, Madam Clerk, we can, from the submission is that on Article 10, Section 101, Commissioner, you may want to plug your ears, but this proposal is to eliminate the position of Commissioner of Public Safety. This position is not needed as was proven when Mayor David Cicilline was mayor of the city of Providence for 8 years. The city of Providence did not have a commissioner of public safety. They had a fire chief, police chief in the city of Providence just for. Since the charter meets every 10 years, I believe it's time now to bring this question out. The residents of Providence let them vote on whether they think city of Providence is the commissioner of public safety. So that's as we do know, that's true. Like Commissioner Pritzby was there during that time under Cicilline. Oh, no, that's right after you were mayor. Come out, so I was there. You were running, I was there. And yes, at that time, Mayor Cicilline did not appoint a commissioner of public safety. And I believe the charter states that if there's not one appointed, the mayor of Providence serves as.
Right.
Right, and of course, because in theory, the commissioner of public safety is the civilian authority of the paramilitary operations of the city government, which is police and fire and stuff like that. So for the Mayor Cicilline's tenure, he didn't have that. So I don't know, so this is proposing, want to have a conversation or people, any comments, concerns about
I
it?
think,
Commissioner Muskie?
thank you, Mr. President. I think that, first of all, I just want to disclose that I'm on the Providence Police Advisory Board. And, this advisory board works very well together. Very close relationship. I just want to put that out there with Commissioner Harris, with Clemens and so forth. So I may be a little prejudiced, but I think the Commissioner does a great job. I think Chief Clemens does a great job. I think the men and women of the police department, the fire department, everybody in public safety does a good job. So we see what's written here, and it's a proposal. I have nothing against anyone. But I think the commissioner does a great job and he works well with the community and with the people of the city of Providence. And I think that organization over there, fire, police, and all the men and women that work in those departments do a great job every day. The jobs over there are very difficult. I understand it. I work closely with these folks every day. And so I'm one that supports the commissioner, supports the police chief, and support the men and women through all those departments and all of public safety. It's a tough job. Good job. I stand up for those folks.
Mr. Penny, then Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Council President. So I second everything that Dr. Montague said and have had great relationships with everybody in the public safety department. I know in my school board days, Commissioner Perry and the police chief took their time and we were dealing with a lot of sensitive issues that involved DCY and other things. And it was really helpful to have thought leaders around this space. The one thing that I do want to ask, and this is something, and I think it's more about in the event of a vacancy of a commissioner, the mayor shall act as the commissioner of all of the different departments. The one thing is I was reading through this in preparation for tonight and just wanted clarification on the intent. So I know the commissioner, I don't know him well. I know that he allows his department leads to lead, right? But as you read through the police department, the head of the police department shall be the commissioner who should appoint the chief of police. The fire department, it should be the commissioner who will, appoint a fire department. So in the absence of the commissioner, is this to read that the mayor is the head of the police department, the mayor is the head of the fire department, or is it more just ceremonial? And is the language more just ceremonial, or is there legal implications to that as well? Because I guess what I'm saying. So I never, until I came on the commission, never read the sections, spent a lot of time in the school department section. And I just want to understand that hierarchy and that structure. So for me, there is a value of a commissioner who is the coordinator of all of these departments that are essential city services. But then what does that next layer look like? So I would assume that there's a direct report to the commissioner. But that's what and that's how I know it to be in practice. And so again, it goes back to what is practice is what is written. But as you're reading the written language, it is the commissioner who's the head of the police department, the commissioner who's the head of the fire department, the commissioner who's the head of communications, et cetera, which I'm just curious. And again, a fan of the commissioner position, just curious how that plays into it.
Commissioner Richard, did you want to say something before we get to the?
About what?
I want to get, well, actually, tell you,
Address that.
so the way it goes right now, you have, so there's not a commissioner of public safety. The mayor sits there and serves as that mayor and the commissioner of public safety. And if there's no fire or police chief, the mayor could be the mayor, the commissioner, police and fire chief at the same time. They're absolutely right. And different times, mayor assistant could have been, and he was commissioner. The second thing is that if so that does have that is correct. You're absolutely right. The mayor, if they don't appoint a commissioner, be the mayor, and then also this is the way it reads right now, and would be both the chief and the fire chief and the commissioner.
But the mayor won't get the pay of all those positions.
No,
No.
right, exactly. He doesn't get the pay, but you're right.
And so this is where I guess confusion set in for me, is I would assume that we have a commissioner of public safety who oversees the 4 central departments, and the 4 department heads report up to the commissioner reports up to the mayor. And I think my assumption was always, in the absence of a chief of police, the commissioner would serve as the public safety commissioner and then the de facto chief of police until the vacancy is filled. But if there's no commissioner, then it's the mayor that does all of that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Exactly, that's exactly right.
And so I don't know why this language is preferred.
Well, back in, I think it was, because remember, so the charter is very mayoral centric charter.
Okay.
I don't feel, they don't people listen, this is 1980, it's very mayoral. This is a division area where they, prior to the charter, the mayors had even greater power. So this was just further, it's a way to concentrate, you know what I mean? And that's the reason why, for example, let me say this is part of, let's talk about checks and balances. Put aside the personnel, put aside commissioner, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
this is not.
I'm gonna talk about simply the position. Let's talk about, I'm talking about as a legislator, talk about checks and balances. Is it fair to say that right now, even the charter, and if you notice by the new, all the departments, Board of License, it's a lot of checks and balances with the council checking and balances with the mayor's. When it comes to one of the most important departments in city government, if you notice, by the way, there's a small check and balance, but it's been declared that it doesn't matter, where basically it says that it doesn't say in here, by the way, that the Commissioner of Public Safety gets reappointed every 4 years, has served for a term. It says they can stay in, or the mayor can stay, or whatever, stay in that position, whatever submitting anything to the council. The whole checks and balances of Commissioner of Public Safety shouldn't be, and this is, I'm gonna go back to this. So the issue I have is this, Commissioner of Public Safety, first off, you look at the background, right? Now, so you have someone who has a bachelor's degree, it's fine, accredited college, so it could be in fine arts, right? And 5 years supervisory experience, administration, relations, equivalent training, supervisor experience, okay? Now, all of a sudden, you have someone's degree in fine arts, and they're the chief of police, now, or chief of the fire department. All this, you're saying, all the respect is that there is definitely a serious, I think, a criteria when you have someone who's gonna be those types of top people. When you have a complete layperson who has no experience, I'm not, this is no, the Commissioner clearly has experience, public safety. I'm saying they picked someone who was a former whatever it was, right? And no experience in public safety whatsoever. They literally could be in charge of, because I'm not gonna appoint a chief of police, I'm gonna run the police department. And they can appoint, and they'll run the police department, a complete layperson who has no experience on a run. So my always concern was that the charter doesn't find the urgency that there should be a commissioner of public safety appointed, number one. And there should be a sense of urgency that that commissioner should have to appoint a chief of police and a chief of fire department. I don't think the way the president works right now, the commissioner serves both as the commissioner and the chief of the fire department. As I'm doing, put it aside. But there's been no, and that's been for quite a few years, there's no sense of urgency of appointing a chief of the fire department. I'm not asking the commissioner, he's not here to talk about, we're talking about the position. And I think my concern is the whole purpose of those divisions is you want to make sure highly trained, highly expertise, people in those types of realms, right? Police and fire. So I would counter with the way it's now. I've seen it go different ways in my tenure. I've seen a mayor run the whole show. I've seen a mayor not have a commissioner. I've seen a commissioner be the commissioner chief of the fire department. I've seen a chief of the police department act and have only duties of the commissioner without being appointed as commissioner. It's so because of this, and I'll use this term, a flexible flyer approach to the charter in this, it has created so many different scenarios over the years in my tenure, where the lack of consistency, no, you're great. You're happy with the person who's there, but you know what? There may be someone who you don't like. And there's no checks and balances in here. Someone who's not doing the job, checks and balances to create accountability. And one of the accountability factors is that every 4 years, whether it's the same mayor, the same council getting reelected, the public should know who is going to be the commissioner of public safety and who's going to run and oversee these departments. And the public should have an opportunity to say, "Who's that? Come to the committee." And oh yeah, I like it.
But that's 403B.
No,
We're gonna get to that.
No, but I'm saying,
Talking about-
but it's always entwined with this because the question is to abolish it. And I'm saying, I don't think you should abolish
All right,
it.
so-
I don't think we're.
But I'm just saying that I think we need to, at this point, we should look at the police and fire.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
first of all, I'd like to say
Sure.
that I'm putting in the column as a supporter of the commission. I've had the opportunity to serve with him as a director when I was a director here in the cabinet. I think he's an excellent director of public safety. But that said, as you said, we're talking about the position.
Right.
We should not be eliminating the position of public safety. I don't think there's any evidence anywhere on that. And appreciate the suggestion, but it's not something that is going to fly. It's going to.
No, that's fair enough. But I think,
myself.
but in this section here, this is where you have to address the piece where, like, no, because actually it's in 101, because 101, this section talks about how the commissioner of public safety, it says right here, this is why I'm bringing it up. It says, it said this gives you the credentials, the public safety. Public safety, head of which shall be commissioner of public safety, referred to as commissioner, should be a person holding at least a bachelor's degree from accredited college, university minimum 5 years, et cetera, et cetera. The department shall include a police department, fire department, et cetera. And this way it goes, in addition to 1201, in the event of a vacancy in the office of the commissioner, the mayor shall act as the commissioner of public safety, and the commissioner has been appointed and approved by the city council. This is a portion of, if we're going to make,
Well,
have that, there has to be a re-up every 4 years.
That part,
We have to
that
address
part goes part of the charter. You're talking about the mayor's powers and the executive office. This, all we're talking about tonight is sort of, in a sense, the job description of the public safety commission, and not how how that person, he or she gets appointed.
No, but it's
Or how they get.
it's in the section we're referring to, that's what I'm telling you, you're not looking at the section in charter. We're looking at section 10-101 Department of Public. I'm reading.
I'm
what
looking at
happens-
section 10, which paragraph?
Oh, no, you're missing, this is not, these are the additional amendments if you do this, that's what this is. Let me go ahead, open the book,
You want to look at
go to section 10-101, the last paragraph, so that's where, if we're going, this is part of where, if we're gonna address the fact that they don't, that has to be re-upped every 4 years, this is the.
1001.
101, right here. In the event of vacancy in the office, Commissioner May shall act until the commission has been appointed and approved by the city council. So how they interpreted it is that you can be a holdover. Okay, our judges on holdovers, they all have to be submitted reports.
I understand, but that all goes to the mayoral powers. This is just if the commissioner turned in his resignation tomorrow, the mayor will serve until the process where to appoint another commissioner. So that is totally not the case with the current commissioner. And the reappointment process is in the mayor's appointment powers and the council's.
Okay, that's good.
Follow.
But I think that if we had 4 we also have to address it in this portion here, too, that's what I'm saying.
I think, you know, we certainly have addressed. We talked about it.
No, I meant that if we have to do a 4 we could also add it to this area.
Well, yeah, so it's like 403's change, I guess that's.
If we do, yes, okay.
So, Council President, so I think what we're talking about, well, first of all, I think there's general consensus that there should be a commissioner of public safety, right? So the recommendation that's noted, the commission, when you feel differently towards that, and establish that Commissioner Perry is right in his role. The question is, who's next? What's next? And I think, Council President, what you're talking about is there an opportunity to professionalize what we're talking about the commissioner needs to bring to make sure that we're memorializing the credentials.
The next mayor shows up,
The
they
expertise
appoint a former.
that we have right now in the current commissioner, right? So we
Right.
know that there's an expertise that lends well to that. We want to make sure that that is the kind of the gold standard that we're setting to professionalize. And we talked about this with some of the other positions, right? This is our opportunity to make sure that we are creating language that will ensure the right type of person. It's not a job description, but it gives the guardrails of the type of person that's needed to fulfill this position as the public safety commissioner. And I agree with Commissioner Ritchie, the duties and the responsibilities of the mayor is a separate matter. However, there is conflating language in here. And so I think, again, this is our opportunity to decide if and where that language belongs, is to make sure that there is consistency with it. But I am all for ensuring a level of professionalization of this position so that it's not just a random bloke who has a 5-year. You don't want me running your commission. You don't want me to be the commissioner of public safety, and I have an advanced
No, but
many years of
if you would,
experience.
I'm okay with this, especially public safety. The issue is that I want to make sure that there is an appointed chief of police and chief of fire.
And
have
that's
the
what, and
credentials.
I feel like that
And
is where there's an
that's what I'm gonna go
opportunity.
to the next line, which is, when you look at section A and that, it says shall appoint shall. I think we need to put a time frame. You shall appoint someone within 60 days of a vacancy. There should be a sense of urgency for those 2 top positions.
There
Because
should
right
be a
now,
good
there
faith.
hasn't been a chief of the fire department for, I don't know how long, a year, a couple of years?
Right, so there should be that good faith effort, right?
Right.
And again, I think we survived without the chief of the fire department because we had somebody like Commissioner Perry who understands public safety. But in the event that we don't, and then we don't have those additional layers, I understand where you're going with this, and I think we're saying the same thing.
Right, and although the commissioner is definitely an expertise in policing,
Right.
policing and firing is still 2 different types of.
Well, that's why you want
Elements.
individual department heads to come with that expertise,
Right.
but I think having public safety knowledge and awareness, right, there's
Yes.
logistics, there's communication, there's strategy, you might be dealing with different on the ground situations, but the high level tactics, there's some universal connection with, right?
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm just seeing, because that's the issue I see now presently. That's a bone of contention, but I'm gonna, anybody that comes, I see, Councilman Taylor.
I just wanted to say
Commissioner Montague?
that as we're going through this process and we're putting this wording in and so forth, so again, go back to this guidance from the city solicitor's office.
Right.
Mhm.
So before I put the majority of the tail on, I just would ask, indulge if the commission would look, if we could, at least in subsection A and subsection B, that there would actually be a time frame of when the commission would have to appoint someone. It should be that you shall appoint someone in a reason, 45 days, 60 days, something. So it's never an open-ended conversation.
Well,
That's what I was
Mr.
asking.
Chairman, and I understand the issue at hand, but to hire a fire chief or even police chief, since we're talking about a fire chief tonight, it's very hard for a short period of time because they do national searches, people choose the job, they have a committee, and, they must bring in more than one, who go back for interviews. I don't know if that's something, I'm not suggesting, certainly not trying to rush the process. But you're
No,
trying to- I understand what you're
respect
trying
that,
to do.
but there has to be
So,
something
what's
that
the
forces-
magic? Is
What
it
are the
6
numbers?
months?
Right.
Is it 3 months? It certainly shouldn't be.
And I think it's been
month.
3 years.
No. I mean, the time that you're suggesting shouldn't, I wouldn't think should be a month or 2
No,
months.
I guess, yeah.
Because it takes a very long time to find the right person for a job like that in a city this size. And I think they
You always have
did
the deputy chief.
have problems trying to find people and fire department, from my point of view as a resident city council, is trying to find, but I can't weigh in on that one way or another. I'm not an expert in fire departments, but you understand what I'm saying?
I get it.
We're not hiring a clerk.
I know, I'm with you.
We're hiring a fire chief or a police chief.
Solid, Commissioner Penny, then I have a majority of the tail. Commissioner Pena?
Thank you. So I agree with Commissioner Ritchie that it could be a long process. And I wonder too, if there's a way to say a search or an active search shall begin within 60 days of said vacancy or something like that, to make sure that there is a process in place, that it's going, it's happening. But it's been many attempts to try to find the right superintendent in schools,
Exactly.
right? And so you don't want to rush to a hire, but you want to make sure that a process begins and that there's an active process so that we don't have long periods of vacancy. But I'm not a believer of just putting anybody in the job to get the job filled. You want the right person.
I put majority of the tail. Majority of the tail, you have the mic, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to explain why I put this in. Number one is that I feel that the commissioner is a ceremonial position because in the 8 years that Mayor Cicilline was there, we did not have a commissioner of public safety, and the director heads reported directly to the mayor. So the mayor is getting a better read of his positions because he's not an elected person from the mayor. So in other words, if I go, Johnny Gliozzi's the president, I'm the majority leader. If there's someone in between us, I can go and talk to John, that person, and that person go to John, but don't want to tell him exactly what I said because he doesn't, obviously, A, want to make it look like I'm not doing my job, B, make it look like everything's messed up. In the 10 years that the commissioner, 10 years that we've had, actually 11 years, sorry, because 2002 to 2011, we didn't have a commissioner. In the beginning of the budget, I'm looking to save money also, because in the budget in 2011, the commissioner came under Mayor Tavares, and this is the position, not the person. $969,000 was his budget. Today, coming up in this budget now, $2.3 million. That's double, over double of what it's been in 11 years. Is the city any better with that double? I don't think so. But also, the commissioner, because his unknowledge of the fire department and different things, has caused $11 million to the city between not knowing the contracts not and go into legal cases because he feels, I'll give you, for instance, there was one case cost the city $175,000. It was with a body shop that was the low bidder on to repair police cars. The commissioner didn't like the body shop guy, so he went with the next bidder. Well, actually, the next bidder after that. The body shop person took it to court and won $175,000. Didn't work on one car, and now it comes out to bid again, and that body shop got the bid because he was the low bidder, and that's the way we should do business: is pick the biz. Don't because you don't like someone pick. Oh, I don't like this guy because when I was in the state police, we went after him and he didn't get caught or whatever the deal was. You know what I mean? So we need to look at saving money, and this is one way to save the money. And I agree. The people I know, Mr. Montague, Mr. Ritchie, and I'm sorry, the lady's name, I didn't catch her name. They like.
Panday.
What's it?
Commissioner
Sorry.
Panday.
Sorry, Commissioner Panday. I'm sorry, I couldn't get your name. But I'm saying to let this come out to the voters. Let the voters vote. And if they vote overwhelmingly to have a commissioner, that's fine. I'm not saying that, I'm saying it should come out to the voters. This is a time we should be looking at saving money in the city of Providence. And if you look at other departments, like they were talking about, well, like a fire chief. I know Mr. Ritchie goes on and says, we should have a person, it can't be just anybody. 3 of the fire chiefs in the state of Rhode Island are now came from Providence Fire Department and put in for the job. And the commissioner stated several times they weren't qualified. Well, how they qualified for Warwick, Central Falls, and West Warwick. 2 fire chiefs in West Warwick, because 2 of them, one retired 10 years, did 10 years and retired, another one's there. So it just doesn't make sense. Also, when you hire, like if you look at Boston, people say, well, Boston has a commissioner. They have a commissioner of police and they have a commissioner of fire. So the police guy knows police, the fire guy knows fire. They come from within the department or they're hired, for that. That's their expertise. If you hire the police, and I'll use Council President Igliozzi's words and throw it back. You don't hire a carpenter to do electrician work. And that's what we have done. And we continue to do. And we need to stop that. And we need to save money, number one, and have the director of that department, whether it's Chief Clemens stays or whatever, he reports directly to the mayor. The chief of fire reports directly to the mayor. The chief of PEMA reports directly to the mayor. If we have a commissioner of public safety, you cannot tell me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different departments, everything is running smoothly and doing correct. It's not, because people have left the fire department. Over 150 people left and out of 11 years the commissioner's been there, 2 of them we've had a fire chief. That's a shame that the state of Rhode Island, Providence, is the biggest city in Providence, and we don't have a fire chief. So I'm looking at saving money. I'm looking at let the voters come out and vote on it. And look at Worcester. Worcester's bigger than us. They don't have a commissioner, and we've proved in 8 years we don't need one. So I just wanted to explain that. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Majority Taylor, Commissioner Panday, and then I know Commissioner Perrin wants to weigh in.
Absolutely, and with all due respect to the majority leader's position, and I respect everybody's position, but when we're looking at this charter, we have to remove personality, right? And so a lot of the information that I heard the majority leader say, it was about the commissioner and performance. And that goes back to, again, why I think that there should be a professionalization of this role and expectations that are clear. But I want to make sure as a commissioner that I am not making decisions based on a personality, but looking at what's best for the city. And for me, the charter allows for these positions to happen. And similar, Council President, as you were saying, to the Board of Licenses, they might want to promulgate something different, right? Just like the practice of the city, then Mayor Cicilline did not fill the position, but the charter allows for that provision, if that makes sense. And so I'm a fan of creating, again, those guardrails, absent the personality of the position, if that makes sense. And the cost savings can come from do we fill or do we not fill, But eliminating it to me creates additional levels of restriction that may or may not be necessary, if that makes sense.
Just, I'm just reiterating one of my biggest issues is that I think there has to be a sense of urgency for, if there's a commissioner, it says shall, but then it should be forced, there has to be some police and fire.
And I agree, Ms.
I
Barker
think, because when you read how the charter's laid out, the commissioner of public safety, even the mayor, anybody can become an elected official. They don't have to have any experience, no background, no nothing. That's great. Check that box off. Now, if they're gonna now run a police department, fire department, or let's say, like that kind of seriously, or the law department, they're gonna have to have certain expertise and education. And this is my take. When I used to talk to one of the founding fathers of the charter back in 1980, passed away recently. And then one of the commission of public safety, read it, it's general, the background. It's on purpose, because it's supposed to be kind of a lay person.
Exactly.
Doesn't have to be a police department, and I get that.
Right.
But what it was, but the whole purpose when he advised me, when it said that he shall appoint, he or she shall appoint the police and fire, was that he may be a lay person, but you're forced that you need to at least hire, you need to hire the professional person for these very important jobs. And for me, my issue is that the lack of not hiring a police chief, and I'm not gonna get into why, and it says shall, and I'm sure the commission will say why, they did national searches like that, but I think one thing the majority did say, there were 3 top fire personnel that did leave City of Providence that didn't get the fire chief position and became fire chiefs someplace else, and yet today we still don't have a fire chief. That to me is a problem. Put aside personalities, there needs to be, this is the protection of people of Providence. They have a right to have a fire chief and a right to a police chief. And no commissioner or mayor should stop that aspect. We also want professionalizing these departments. The last thing, like I said, the percent of this particular commissioner, let's say he was so-and-so who has 0 education, he or she has 0 education, has nothing. Now they're making police and fire department decisions because there's been no push to force them to hire a professional in that position. So that's one of my biggest issues. So I think that has to be addressed, because when I read shall, that means it should be done. And I don't believe, I don't know how many years it's been, 2 or 3 years, we haven't had a fire chief. I think that's a pretty long time. How many? 8 years. We haven't had a fire chief in 8 years. So I think there's a problem when we can't get the law department to enforce the shall. We can't get the mayor to do it. And the people of Providence, put aside, and you may not see it, but don't forget, we hear it at the council. We deal with those departments. We deal with the rank and file. We deal with those. The fact that there wasn't one for years and the shall meant nothing in the charter causes concerns for me, because I don't think the people should be doing without that. They have a right to have a fire chief, police chief with the proper credentials. That's my biggest issue in here, and I would hope the commission would look at it and say we should at least address this, because that's something that should be done. I think this is my take. Right, this way, and I know some former commissioners who had no experience, no police, no fire background.
Right, because it was a citizen position, and it
Exactly.
could be a citizen position, and maybe
Well, when
some
you-
hours, put in a highly
Yeah, that's
qualified person, which is fine,
And
which
it's
is
nothing
great,
wrong with it.
probably a better idea than
Yeah,
just
no.
just
But
a
the
general
criteria, the charter, the wisdom, which I thought was interesting, was they understood to make it a citizen position. They didn't want to, they understood that a citizen should be supervising some from our paramilitary operations. So when you talk about the empathy between neighborhoods and people and police and fire.
They wanted a balance.
The
They wanted
commission
a
was
balance
out of
between an
balance.
elected official, a citizen, and a
Right.
professional.
Right. I just want to make
law
sure,
enforcement,
I just want to make sure the
personnel.
professionals get appointed. That's my
what
issue.
yeah, there's a way to
My issue, I want to make sure
professionalize
professionals get
this,
appointed.
right? And I think the spirit of having more of that just
Profession-
resident civilian, we professionalize this to what it is.
Professionalize what, the job description of the commissioner?
I don't see the job description, but as you're looking at some of the qualifications and stuff like that, and
For
I don't
the
know.
commissioner, so then you would take away the option that a future mayor would have of having a citizen commissioner. So if the charter were to be changed the commissioner's position has to be a law enforcement person.
Or some type of public safety
Well,
professional.
then you're doing away with what's been many years of the trend, and I'm not saying it should or shouldn't, but that's a major sea change from the way the position's been handled. That the mayor has the option of having a citizen commissioner of public safety.
And I think that raises a great point, Commissioner, is there an opportunity to create a community-based position as a liaison, right? It's not, does it have to be one or the other? Can it be both somehow, some way?
Well, I just, you know, you mentioned, the commission, I believe, was supposed, is, when you read this, was generated to be that community kind of based position. Where that's the only comment, that is the community person. That's the community opportunity. So you deal with this present commissioner, outreach, you talk, that's always been the kind of like that position. I thought, this is how I viewed it as. I just want to, I think, so I think it's there, but I don't necessarily, I don't necessarily have a problem with the credentials of what the Commission on Public Safety is right now, because I think it's good that future mayors, councils have an option to have an average citizen, a citizen who can be part of the process and do that. But the issue is I want to make sure that you just will happen to have a commissioner with a public safety background, but they utilize it as a position to usurp hiring a fire chief or a police chief. And I don't want that to happen. So that's why I want to look at A and Commissioner Penny and then Commissioner.
Right, and so I think that's where it goes to, and I believe perhaps I'm conflating the two. So in the absence, or so it actually reads, the head of the police department shall be the commissioner. So if you have a commissioner who's been appointed, who is, let's say, a member of the community, who's truly that link or bridge between public safety and community, and I think that there is tremendous value to that.
Awesome.
It then goes against the argument of we need a police fire chief. Do you see what I'm saying? So now you have somebody who doesn't have public safety experience.
Right.
So that's where, for me, this becomes confusing.
Great, absolutely, because it says the commissioner is
In
the
every
head.
single one of these
Yeah, that's
states.
right, and therefore they don't have the credentials to be it.
Exactly.
So you
that's
can't be,
where-
you can't be,
You
I see,
can't
that's
be
right.
both.
Great
So
point.
that's
Right.
when I first read this, I read it like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Because I agree, the spirit of what this was originally inked as was to have that link between community and public safety to ensure that there was this checks and balance. You get that. But then when you do the deeper dive of A, B,
Yeah.
C, it is the head of the department should be the commissioner. And as somebody who lived in Providence for a great number of years, again, let's say I were appointed commissioner and there was not a police chief and not a fire chief, you don't want me running your police department.
Right.
You don't want me running your fire department, right? So that's why I was
They
using
want
myself as an
Commissioner Ritchie.
example. You know what, I feel much more comfortable with that. Because he at least knows municipal government and how it runs, right? But if you were to bring in a layperson, and I'm calling myself that layperson, and let's just say as that layperson, I have absolutely made every department head irate and they leave in protest. Now you have me as that layperson in charge of 4 highly sensitive departments for the city.
Right.
That is where this has become, so that's why I was saying either we professionalize it on the commissioner's side, or we remove that the commissioner is the de facto head of each of these departments, and I think for me, that is where the conflation lives, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and if I may add to that.
Commissioner Pritzker.
So if the commissioner is being removed as the department head of those respective components of public safety, we also may want to add that the mayor shall appoint the respective department, the respective heads of police, fire, communications, and EMS within a particular.
Right, then those guardrails need to go in, or the commissioner can lead the search and must begin a national search or begin a search within 60 days of said vacancies or 30 days within said vacancies. Again, because if you have a layperson coming in, and this is where I'm going to go back to, you know, we're looking at the personality who happens to be a public safety.
You can't do that.
You can't. You have to decouple that. Because for right now,
But I
Well,
want to say
it's
tonight,
important
you
if it's our bill.
got you got an extremely valid point there. I think, the reason I think I'm telling some of the history of it, because I'm trying to give you a little, some anecdotal evidence of how different administrations have kind of used this kind of position in a funny way. And you think it's one way or this way, and yet although they can or cannot do it, is that how we really want to have it done? You know what I'm saying? And I think, and that's the question, because you're absolutely right, because a guy could be, a man or woman could have no background ever, and they don't put a police or fire, and they're running the whole show.
that's right, and that's the
And
part
that's a danger.
and that's why I'm saying for me,
You're right.
this is our opportunity to professionalize it, and if we're keeping A, B, C, the department heads consistent, then I'm gonna advocate that we professionalize who is our Commissioner of Public Safety. If you're, or we have to change the subsections to ensure that there is a person of knowledge and substance and credential who is within each of these. Do you understand? Does that make sense now?
No, I agree.
Okay.
If you think about the history of this prior to 1980, the position was a layperson, part-time,
Correct.
because my friend's father was the Commissioner of Public Safety, and he ran for mayor. The Dolly Brown race, he was the Commissioner of Public Safety. And then in 1980 became, and I think they carried over that citizen position, but in my opinion, it should be someone with more
Well,
public
it's gonna be,
safety
it's gonna be
background
either
like
or,
we have
right?
now.
It's either, it's either you keep the background this way, but then you can't allow the person to be an
Right.
automatic head of those departments.
I understand. your
Or you
point.
make them, and then you add, you get a point, or you up the ante on the commissioner position, could be, who knows, right? On the education background, then if they're gonna be running these departments, they actually have some
But we don't
background.
have that qualification for the mayor, who hires all the department heads, so he doesn't necessarily, he or she would not necessarily have a background in
Yeah, I know,
finances.
but that's,
Or to
yeah,
hire
that's
a
right.
finance
But if you
director.
run for
or any
mayor
other
of Providence, you don't have to fill out an application. This is based on, we're actually creating a job description in the city charter. We're creating in concrete, in the city constitution, we have the opportunity to define the job description of Commissioner of Public Safety or any of these positions. As mayor of Providence, we don't have the authority to say, the mayor of Providence has to have, blue hair, have 50 years of
Just has
this.
that one
80
more vote than everybody
Right,
else.
just said one more vote. So and isn't the purpose of the charter, to give guidance to who could be a mayor, who has no experience and no business to be mayor? It forces that they have to follow the charter, so they have to hire professional people. Because the charter gives you guidance for professional people, right? They give education,
But you
background.
have job descriptions throughout the charter that the mayor hires.
Right, but then the mayor has to follow those. And I'm saying the charter then, my point is the charter provided the guidance you just mentioned earlier, which said that I may be a mayor who doesn't know what's going on. I'm 18 years old, I guess they're like the mayor. But now I have to follow, I have to hire, a board of, a commissioner, and they have to at least have this credentials. I can't hire my friend, I played
Well, that's
baseball.
why they're on those job descriptions.
No, but they're in here.
Right, that's why they're in there.
Right, that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
we're not disagreeing.
No, I know, I'm saying,
I think-
you beat up the mayor,
Well,
I was gonna mix up.
never mind.
Okay, sorry. We're doing, Commissioner Perry.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the commission. I'll be brief and I'll do my best to keep me personally out of it, but I need to respond to Councilman Taylor's comments that I've bloated my budget in the last 11 years. My budget, or the budget of the Commissioner of Public Safety, may have been 900,000. It's 2.4 now. What I've done is taken existing resources and put them under the Commissioner of Public Safety for some efficiencies, and eliminated jobs by doing it through attrition to save money, because we had duplicate efforts when I came on with different functions for the police and for the fire, that I've tried to create some efficiencies. But Councilman Taylor would like you to believe that I am hiring and spending taxpayer money, inappropriately and inefficiently. And I take exception to that. Interesting conversation about the position. As I said, eliminate it or not. You've debated that. Some of the, from my perspective, in the 11 years that I've been here, I tried to create some efficiency, and, I won't talk about, because it'll go into a longer conversation, whether you ought to have a police chief and a fire chief. Leaving that aside, it's an interesting discussion and debate. But, I just caution whatever changes that are made, not for me, because I'm an old timer. And in my twilight, this is not about me. I just caution about what this commission recommends for the position of Commissioner of Public Safety. Whether you eliminate it, doesn't seem there's an appetite. Whether you do a job description or make it more stringent on who it ought to be. And also, Mr. President, you and I disagree on what's the tenure of the Commissioner of Public Safety. Should the council ratify this position every 4 years? 11 years ago, when I was appointed by the mayor, I was ratified by the council unanimously, including you sitting on the council back then. And there may be some that either disagree with my either style of managing, but I've always tried to do what's best for the city, create efficiencies, and have accountability across public safety. I'll just note for the record, the colonel of the state police is now appointed by the governor. And after I left, as I served in that position, I could have served indefinitely, depending on who the governor is. So you remember Colonel Stone, a Providence police officer, served for 28 consecutive years as our colonel and superintendent of the state police. Right now, the governor appoints, the Senate confirms, and the superintendent will continue to serve until the governor replaces the superintendent, whether it's in 4, 8, or 12, or 24 years. That's the way it is now. And there are other positions where there's a tenure of time, 10 years, a position of light serves, and then either is reappointed, reconfirmed by the Senate or the council, or removed and replaced. So I appreciate the comments. It's not personal with me whatsoever. And this is an important both discussion and future for how this position, the Commissioner of Public Safety, should serve in the authority that he or she has under this language in the charter. So there are some moving parts that I've always tried to improve the professionalism and accountability and efficiency for public safety since I've been here, and that will continue until I leave. Thank you, Mr. President.
Hey, Commissioner, we've had a spirited debate here. I'm gonna have majority leader speak, and then if you can limit, and then we'll go from there. Majority leader, and then I'll give, of course, the commissioner one last chance if he wants to counter, and then we'll move on. Is that
Okay,
fair?
that sounds good.
Is that fair? Majority leader Taylor, you have the mic, sir.
I'm gonna say that I'm glad that the commissioners have brought up the conversation of the language in the charter, because we only have every 10 years to do this. So whether it is, my suggestion was to eliminate the commissioner, but if we don't go and eliminate the commissioner, or, come out to a vote. I mean, I can say eliminate the commissioner. Everybody can go out and vote and say keep the commissioner. But I believe, and I know the commissioners have been discussing, the language doesn't make sense. In other words, the head of the department, whether it's the police chief, the fire chief, the communications director, the emergency management director, they should be reporting directly to the mayor. Because as the commissioner is hired, we all know it's a political, whoever the commissioner is, it's a political appointment, right? And when he or she is a yes man to the mayor. So that person might not want to bring back the truth from these department heads. And the department head doesn't have direct access to the mayor because he has to go through the commissioner on the way it's read. So I'm glad that there is discussion on this. And I would hope that, we can change some of the language, and also the council president mentioned about shall. We shall appoint a fire chief, but it should say, I guess, in what year. I'm glad. Thank you for at least listening. Maybe don't agree with eliminating the commissioner, but I'm glad that there's some discussion and good discussion on both sides of like what the language should be as far as the head of the police is the commissioner and all the other, I want to thank you for bringing that up and discussing that. Thank you.
Majority Leader. Commissioner, do you want anything you have to say?
Respectfully, I'm good. I think all has been said. I appreciate, the opportunity to address this group, and I respect everyone's perspective, and we all want what's best for the city of Providence. So I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So does Commissioner, anything else to say on this? Commissioner Panda?
If I just may ask, Council President, can we find out what other municipalities do around
Yeah, I think it's
this?
a good idea.
And I don't know, may I actually ask Commissioner Berry a question on that? Like, would he know, or can we find that out, I guess? is
Oh,
what
we
I'm
can
saying.
find it. We can find out. Well,
I'm curious
Madam
about
Clerk, can you have
the
as part of,
Right.
as part of the,
That's what I wrote down
yeah,
here,
the
research.
Yeah, we do some research on the Commissioner of Public Safety position. So actually, the city solicitor, I asked you to do that too. And go through that. That's good. We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
If the commissioner has any information, of course, submit to the clerk and we can see what they ask. I'm fine with that. All right. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But I also, what the
Commissioner
commissioner
Ritchie?
brought up, let's get that too, in writing when we talk about it again. About this, the colonel of the state police.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
Because I
Oh,
don't believe-
superintendent.
Superintendent, there's not a commissioner of public safety at the state level.
Right,
Probably
right.
many cities and towns may not even have it, they're not the size of Providence.
May I respond?
Commissioner, go ahead.
So they did create a commissioner of public safety when they consolidated 3 other entities at the state level. So it was always the colonel of the state police running the state police. When they consolidated after I left, they put the sheriffs, they put the training school, the municipal training, and the Capitol Police under the head of the state police. They changed, may have been Colonel Asumpico, but they changed the position. So there is a superintendent of the state police and a public safety commissioner, all serving by that one individual who is overseeing all those entities.
Great, thank you for that.
I think we can have some more conversation because I think it's a very good conversation to have. It looks like we have quite a few issues, which is one of them, of course, is to increase the background of the Commissioner of Public Safety, the job description, and then this way you don't necessarily have to deal with that, or you keep the present description of Commissioner of Public Safety, and then you address the idea that a lay person has no background could serve as police and fire chief. So I think that's one of the issues we're talking about, right? Is that fair to say? Huh? I don't know, either or, whatever it is. And then, and also about the other departments. And then we talked about the other issue concerning, we'll do some more conversation about, if it stays the same, should the Commissioner of Public Safety, is there a time frame they should appoint a police or fire? Yeah, okay. And I think, and then of course, do you put on the ballot whether or not, do you put the ballot on to remove the Commissioner of Public Safety? If you do, then you have to change other things in the charter. I'm saying, I'm putting down
We have
all
to
the
be
others.
careful
Yeah.
that this ballot isn't too long.
I'm sorry,
All
sir?
right? That the ballot.
Oh, yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Right.
I agree.
That's gonna come in April.
You'll have voters sitting there
I was just trying to do a synopsis for the
Yeah,
clerk.
That's what
Like, I
discussion,
think
yeah.
those are
yeah.
what are the discussion, I want to make sure I'm getting it, so I'm not.
When we get to April, we're gonna trim this, we're gonna have to
Yeah.
trim it down, we've been talking all along.
Okay.
We're gonna be waiting for long.
Okay. Are there any other departments, heads in this thing? Does the commission have any other concern about any of the departments? I think, just so you know, I think there was a question, if you can reach out to the Board of Parks Commissioner, Superintendent of Parks. There's always this question about parks and recreation facilities. And I think in 1980, you didn't have as many rec centers as you have today. And so now it's kind of, there's always this conversation. But I know, but it is part of the section, right? Is it part of section
No,
9?
Next section.
Next time.
No,
No, it's not.
section 102.
They're coming up on a.
Are they?
date.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. Oh,
They're-
no, good.
They'll be on,
Apologies.
They'll-
Catch your head.
they're on next week's meeting.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, and by the way, I think we also have the water supply next week.
Nope, April 20.
Commissioner, do you have any comments or questions? Councilman, did you have any comments or questions that I didn't? you were here?
No, it was a great discussion. I think it was really holistic and yeah,
Just checking.
I'll be back.
One minute,
We didn't scare them away.
I know.
So any other comments, questions, commissioners? Then with that, may I entertain a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion by Commissioner Richard, second by Commissioner Panda. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you all, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Solicitor, Commissioner, Majority Leader, Councilman Duncalf, Councilman Fortune. Thank you all participating. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.